my creative friends, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Prompts. I'm excited about today's session because what we're going to basically do is, in this session, I'm going to look at how to reverse engineer your target, whatever your target might be. Now, obviously, I have a specific target, so I'm going to talk about that. You have a specific target, so I want to sort of show you how to adapt that to that. Whatever target you have, this episode is going to guide you through that process. And then what we're going to do is, starting on Monday, I'm going to actually go through the reverse engineering of the creative process that I did to build fast screenplays so that you can understand how the whole thing works. So, and I'm trying to fight this cough as well, so my apologies if I go into a little fit here or there. Now, to reverse engineer anything, what you really need to do, and I think what's missing from what a lot of people who set about don't see actually what the end is before they start. The very first step in my process is to see the end before you begin, because you have to understand what your goal actually is, not just in theory, not just sort of in dreamland, but in reality. What does it really look like? What would it feel like if you were there? If you were capable of doing the thing? If you had finished creating the thing? If other people were interacting with the thing? Most writers don't ever take the time to figure that out because they have that imagination, they have that dream, and then they make it all about them. They make it all about them getting that thing. You have an idea for a movie. In your imagination, if all it is about you getting your dream, then you're not really thinking through the target itself. So to reverse engineer that target, imagine if you had it. Imagine if you achieved it. Imagine if you got there. Imagine what it looks and feels like to have it already. Now, if you start to actually reverse engineer it, what you need to imagine is, what are the circle of people around your target? What are the circle of people who are involved in making it, who are going to benefit from it being made, who are going to experience the world with it? Okay, if you imagine that circle of people, now what do they all want? What do they all need? How does it benefit them in some way? So, for example, let me walk you through mine, and it'll sort of give you some ideas about this. So, when I set out to on this venture here to sort of teach writers how to write screenplays, my goal was not to be a screenwriting teacher. I have no interest in that, and so when I set out to do it, I didn't want to just teach screenwriting, because that's not that. The way most people teach screenwriting is they look at the films that already exist, they deconstruct those films, they figure out what went where and the dynamics that made that work, and then they tell you to do the same thing. But if you have an idea and it doesn't quite fit into those parameters, well, then it's not really going to work with that. So I didn't want to just sort of deconstruct things. I don't like giving lots of examples of how to do things, because I think it's more important for you to exercise your own imagination. But that stems from my target. My target is not to help you write a screenplay. My target is to build an independent film studio. Now, if you think that through for a minute, building an independent film studio means making lots of different films. Now, if we made, let's say, 15 films, and they all followed the same formulaic structure that 80% of screenwriting teachers teach, if they all followed the same basic formula, the audience would very quickly be able to spot where things are happening, would be able to spot how things happen. It's not enough to use the formula if you want to actually build a film studio. We need a variety of films. We need a variety of genres. We need different surprises along the way. We need different narrative approaches. Lots of movies that exist in the world do not follow the formula approach. So my whole thing was, all that stuff exists, and you can learn a lot. I'm not trying to dismiss a lot of those kinds of approaches, because there's a lot to learn in it to understand dynamics of movies that have worked in the past. But to take your idea and turn it into something, here's the thing that we all need. We all start with an idea. We all need to get that idea onto the page. We all need to then shape that into a screenplay. We all then need to make sure that gives the idea that was in your head to the reader reading it. Then we need to make sure that it lands with them so they feel about it the way that you wanted them to feel about it, so that it actually hits its target. And then we need to actually go and connect with the person who's going to then make it, right? So that process is the same whether you're writing a formulaic 3-act structure film, whether you're writing a completely experimental, non-traditional, inverse narrative, something that doesn't actually make sense, something that's not plot-driven, something that's just a talky film where two people are debating some sort of philosophy. It doesn't, at the end of the day, it's not about shoehorning your idea into something. It's about taking you through this process. Because if we can take writers through that process, but make sure that what they do write about, that experimental film or that non-traditional narrative film, still lands with the reader the way they want it to land with the reader, then that becomes a success. Now, it may not be the big box office success, but that might not be what you're going for, right? So to reverse engineer building an independent film studio, I need to think not just about me and having my independent film studio and won't that be great and I'll be king of the world. It's not about that. At the end of the day, it's about how do I get as many people as possible to that finish line? What do we need to develop to actually get there? To reverse, my point is, to reverse engineer the process itself, to reverse engineer the target that you're going for. You don't just need to think about your vantage point. You need to think about the other person's vantage point. When I think about all the people that will benefit from me building an independent film studio, well, then suddenly I can start to think about how can I make their life easier? How can I help them? Because in helping them, I help me, right? So I'm looking at comments and I'm seeing people talking about their story ideas or what they want, or are you going to need directors and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, you're thinking about you. Yeah, we're making movies. Of course, every movie is going to need a director. You're thinking about you. Stop thinking about you and think about how to build the thing, right? So if your goal is, for example, to be a film director, what do you need to do? Well, in order to get that big Hollywood directing gig, you're going to need to be able to prove yourself. They're going to need to know you can handle yourself on a big set with lots of money. So how do you do that? Well, you work on smaller sets with lesser money, and you demonstrate that you have those skills. You develop those skills. You have a good eye. You have a reel that can show the things that you've made along the way, right? If you wanted to be a musician, what's the end goal? Well, the end goal is to, tour the world and sell out stadiums, right? Well, if that's the goal, you're going to need a lot of people to like your music. How do you get a lot of people to like your music when you don't know anybody yet? Well, you make lots of little music and you put it out there and you start building an audience and you connect with that audience and you grow it as it goes along. So if you're an indie filmmaker and you don't want to join me on this adventure, you want to do your own thing, totally fine. What do? You start expanding that network, you start building those skills. Now, the people who are going to join up with you, the people who are going to want to get involved with you, are going to want to get involved with you, not because of you, but because they can see how they will benefit from what they want. So as I create this system out here, I do so with the full knowledge. You guys don't care about what I'm trying to achieve. You guys care about what you're trying to achieve. And if I can help you get what you're trying to achieve, that will help me get what I'm trying to achieve. So to reverse engineer anything, to truly reverse engineer it, you have to do a couple things. First of all, you have to know what it is. You have to be able to see it very clearly. If it's fuzzy and vague, I want to make $1 million. I want to be a movie star. By the way, I've had all these kinds of goals along the way. It's not until you start sharpening it. It's not until you start identifying exactly what it is that you're looking for, what the exact target physically really in the real world is. Because a dream in your head, I want to be a movie star, I want to be a rock star, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to be a millionaire, whatever it is. Those dreams are fuzzy. They're not tangible. Like, I know what I would do with $1 million. I don't have $1 million, so I can still dream of being a millionaire. But if all it is to be this thing, then it's too vague. If we make it specific, make it clear, make it distinct, Then all of a sudden we can imagine what needs to happen to bring that into a reality, and who in its orbit is affected by that. And how can you help the people in its orbit to get what they want in order to help you get what you want? Now, if you're writing screenplays, for example, as an example, if you're writing screenplays, you may think, well, I want to write a screenplay that gets turned into a film. Well, how can you reverse engineer that? Now, the process itself, from idea to story to screenplay to the deal, I'm going to reveal that over the course of the next week. Each day, I'm going to look at a different phase. So that's what the next week is going to be about. Episodes, I don't know what the numbers are at this point, but that's what we're going to do. So we can dig further into that aspect of it later. For now, we're still looking at sort of business and overview mindset strategy, right? You need to figure out how you're going to, how you can do things that are going to help someone else so that you can build up your framework. I see so many writers, and this may be the mythology of screenwriting or the outmoded notion of how you become a screenwriter back in the studio era or something, where everybody's like out trying to write a spec screenplay. And you need to do that. You absolutely must do that, and it must be a pro-level project. Because if it's not pro-level, you're never going to get that gig, right? But in the meantime, as you're developing those skills, you can absolutely apply your writing skills in other ways. Always be thinking about, how can I turn my writing into something more visual? What in my local community, what in the people that I know can I do and contribute to help them, that in the process helps me understand more how to make their presentation more visual? If you imagine like a local small business or something, and that small business is not very good at marketing themselves, you as a screenwriter could go to them and say, what could we do? Use your creativity, use your imagination. How can we make your message more visual? How can we turn your message into a story? That's a whole other sort of sideline from what I've built here, is helping businesses do that. So by doing that, it helps me see story better. It would help you see story better. People think they're lost in the, you're not in Hollywood. If you're not in Hollywood, you're not in Hollywood. So you're sort of imagining there's nothing you can do from that distance. But in fact, you can always be improving your craft. You can always be moving forward. You can always be developing your skills. It is my contention, as I've said before, and as I will say many times again, is my contention that you have to take little action every day. Consistent, ongoing, daily action. That's how you get where you're trying to go. To reverse engineer where you're trying to get to, you need to simply figure out what you're going to do each of those days to move consistently toward that goal. You need to know, you need to have the sort of the road marker indicators of how do you know if you're getting close or if you're far off track. Identify what those things are. Identify how to recognize if you're not quite achieving your goal. If you send your script out for feedback and it gets obliterated, nobody can make heads or tails of your project or whatever, do you have a strategy then for how to go back and refine it and make it better? Or you're just sort of shooting in the wind, hoping for the best? That's the way most people handle it, because they're not, that dream, that goal, that end game is not specific. And they're not thinking specifically about how it affects people. Screenwriting is the perfect metaphor for any other thing as well, because in a screenplay, if you succeed, that means you're helping other people succeed in what they want to do. A director who wants to be a big director needs an extraordinary screenplay. The story is everything. The director can have this nice flashy thing, but it's going to look like a music video director without a story that grabs the audience, pulls them in, and hangs onto them for an hour and a half. You see how that's a completely different skill than just making some nice, pretty pictures. Nice, pretty pictures they wash over us in this era of social media where we have images everywhere. Nice images are not enough. Story is what it's about. So if you create that great story, if you create that great screenplay, it's not just about you getting the deal or you seeing your name in lights or you making $1 million or you, whatever the fuzzy dream is. It's about you're going to make something that's going to inspire other creative people to make something as well. And all of you together make the movie. And the movie is the thing. Let's pull this back into a daily prompt for you. How to reverse engineer your target. Number one, identify your target very, very clearly. Be specific about it. What does it look like exactly? If you know that, figure out who in its orbit are going to be affected by that. What do they need? How do they benefit in such a way that makes your thing happen? If you're a musician, for example, you want to do stadium tours, it's because you've made music that just rocked people, that resonates with them, that they love, right? That they sing along to in the shower. At the end of the day, you have affected those people. Those people feel better for the music that you've given them. Does it make sense? So it's not just about you and your rock star dream. It's about you and how you're affecting all those other people. If you start to think about those things, then you reverse engineer the process. What are the steps that I need to take to get there? Really, my goal with what I've set out to do is not just to teach you how to write a screenplay. My goal is to build an independent film studio. And so it's a completely different thing than trying to get you. I don't just want you to write one screenplay. I want you to have the skills to be able to write many, to be able to turn all those ideas in your head into viable, effective, quality, moving, emotional, compelling, viscerally exciting stories. Does that make sense? So that's my take on how to reverse engineer your target. Today's prompt is pretty simple. Well, it's not going to be necessarily that simple depending on where you are in the life cycle of this process. What you need to do is you need to look at your own, whatever you're working on at the moment. You need to look at it objectively, think about what it really is, figure out the steps this is going to take to get there, figure out who it's going to affect, and how you can change their lives and what their ambitions are for the positive, because that's what's going to get you where you're trying to go. Sound good? If you have any questions, comments, disagree, like, dislike, whatever, be sure to subscribe if you're not already subscribed, comment, and then we will see you. Tomorrow's the personal vlog entry. I hope you'll join me for that, but it's non-essential, because if there's anything that comes up, I will reteach it in some future episode. But it's a nice little journey if you want to join me. And then on Monday, we're going to start at the end, because everybody wants to know how to sell their screenplay. So we're going to start with that on Monday, and then we're going to gradually work our way backwards each day. So over the next 7 to 10 episodes, aside from the personal vlog entries, we're going to reverse engineer the process. So you'll be able to see how this episode plays out over time. So thanks for watching. Thank you for following along. Thank you for participating. If you're in the comments, actually participating, it really does mean a lot to me. And the most important thing, as always, you know what it is. The most important thing is that when you're done with this, stop, go quiet, turn everything off, process, think, filter it. Look at it through your own personal point of view and your own unique experience. Really take a moment with this stuff. And then take action. 10 minutes, an hour, 10 hours, it's up to you. But take some action today. Promise me. And then we'll see you tomorrow.